Get ready to dream. Close your eyes, the story is about to begin. Arthur arrived in the peaceful seaside town of Lyme Regis, hoping to find the inspiration he had been lacking. The town, with its narrow streets and charming houses, offered a tranquil and picturesque refuge, a perfect antidote to the hustle and bustle of London. Settling into a small house by the sea, Arthur quickly became enchanted by the natural beauty of the region, especially the beaches of Lyme Regis, where the sea met the land in an eternal embrace. One night, during a full moon, Arthur felt an irresistible urge to play his violin on the beach. The moonlight illuminated the sand with a silvery glow, creating an almost magical setting. Sitting on a rock near the water, he began to play a soft and melancholic melody, his notes blending with the sound of the waves crashing against the shore. The music seemed to take on a life of its own, resonating through the night air and spreading across the ocean. In the depths of the sea, Merida, a mermaid of incredible beauty and curiosity, heard Arthur's enchanting notes. The music drew her in like a magnet, awakening an uncontrollable curiosity within her. Rising to the surface, she emerged slowly, staying hidden in the shadows of the rocks near the beach. Her eyes shone with fascination as she watched the young musician, who seemed to be in a deep trance, completely immersed in his art. "Who is he?" Merida whispered to herself, her words lost in the sound of the waves. She had never heard such a touching melody, so full of human emotions that she barely understood. Arthur, on his part, felt a strange connection with the sea that night. His music seemed to be guided by a force beyond his understanding, and he had the feeling that he was not alone. Looking out to the horizon, he saw the waves shimmering under the moonlight but didn't notice Merida's presence, who continued to watch him with attentive and curious eyes. The following days were marked by a routine that became almost sacred for Arthur. Every night, he returned to the same rock on the beach and played his violin, increasingly immersed in his search for inspiration. And every night, Merida emerged from the ocean to listen. Arthur's music seemed to tell stories of his soul, stories that resonated deeply in the mermaid's heart. Why does he play with such sadness? Merida wondered as she watched Arthur night after night. Can the sea heal his pain? One night, the moon was especially bright, almost as if it was blessing the encounter that was about to happen. Arthur began to play a new melody, a composition he had created that day. The notes were full of hope and melancholy, a reflection of his own conflicting feelings. It was then that Merida decided she could no longer remain in the shadows. Emerging from the waters, she cautiously approached the shore, her eyes fixed on the young musician. When Arthur looked up, he was stunned to see the graceful figure before him. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming. Who are you?" he asked, his voice trembling with surprise and awe. "My name is Merida," the mermaid replied, her voice as soft as the whisper of the waves. "I heard your music and couldn't resist coming to you." Arthur was speechless, unable to believe what he was seeing. A mermaid. He had read tales of mermaids as a child but never imagined he would meet a real one. "My music, did you like it?" he finally managed to ask. "Yes," Merida nodded, her eyes shining with sincerity. "Your music is beautiful and sad. It touches my heart in a way I can't explain." They spent the rest of the night talking, Arthur sharing stories of his life on land and Merida speaking about the depths of the ocean. Every word exchanged seemed to strengthen a strange and magical connection between them. Arthur felt a new wave of inspiration, something he had never experienced before. "You have a gift, Arthur," Merida said. "Your music has the power to touch souls, both human and marine." Arthur smiled, feeling a new hope blooming in his heart. He knew that encounter had changed his life forever, and he could hardly wait to see where this new journey would take him. With Merida by his side, he felt he could finally find the perfect melody, one that united the sky, the earth, and the sea in an eternal symphony. Arthur continued to play his violin on the peaceful nights at the beach in Lyme Regis, unaware that he was being watched by curious eyes from the ocean. He felt an inexplicable connection with the sea, as if the waves responded to his melody, but he couldn't understand what it meant. Every note he played seemed to carry the essence of the ocean, bringing to the surface deep and unknown feelings. Meanwhile, Merida, the mermaid, hid in the shadows of the rocks, fascinated by Arthur's music. She had never heard anything so beautiful and melancholic before, and that melody awakened a curiosity in her that could not be ignored. However, she hesitated to reveal herself, fearing how the young musician would react to her presence. On an especially clear night, when the full moon illuminated the beach with a silvery light, Merida decided she could no longer hide. She emerged from the waters cautiously, approaching Arthur, who, absorbed in his music, did not notice her presence immediately. When he finally looked up and saw the mermaid before him, he dropped his violin bow, shocked and amazed at the same time. "Who are you?" Arthur asked, his voice trembling slightly. "Are you a mermaid?" Merida smiled softly and replied, "Yes, my name is Merida. Your music, it's simply enchanting. I heard it from beneath the sea and felt I had to meet you." Arthur was still stunned, but curiosity and fascination soon overcame the initial shock. "I'm Arthur. I never imagined mermaids actually existed. It's an honor to meet you." From that moment on, a magical connection began to blossom between them. Arthur and Merida spent their nights talking and getting to know each other better. Merida shared ancient stories from her underwater kingdom, tales of sea creatures and magical songs that no one outside the ocean had ever heard. Every word and melody Merida revealed filled Arthur with a new wave of inspiration, as if he were discovering a completely new world through her eyes. "There are so many stories hidden in the depths of the sea," Merida would say with a sparkle in her eyes. "Stories of love, tragedy, and hope. And each one is engraved in songs that only we, mermaids, know." Arthur, with a heart full of admiration, would respond, "I would love to learn all those songs and stories. I feel they could help me find the inspiration I've been searching for." The nights continued like this, with Arthur playing his violin and Merida singing ancient melodies of the sea. They created a perfect symbiosis, where Arthur's music and Merida's songs intertwined in a sublime harmony. With each meeting, their connection deepened, and Arthur felt that he was finally finding the inspiration he had been seeking. However, both were aware of the barriers that separated them. Arthur was a human, tied to the land, while Merida belonged to the sea, a world he could barely comprehend. They knew their realities were too different, but the magic of the connection they shared was undeniable. "Sometimes, I feel like I'm living in a dream," Arthur confessed one night. "A dream where music can truly unite two worlds so different." Merida looked at him tenderly. "Maybe it's not just a dream, Arthur. Maybe our connection can actually create a new path where our worlds can coexist in harmony." As time went on, the friendship and admiration between Arthur and Merida began to transform into something deeper. Both felt that, despite their differences, there was something powerful and true in their relationship. The music and stories they shared not only united them but also made them believe that, somehow, they could overcome the barriers between their worlds. As the moon continued to shine over the beach of Lyme Regis, Arthur and Merida knew they were just beginning to explore the depth of their magical connection. And, although there were still many challenges ahead, they were determined to discover where this melody of the sea would take them. The growth of love between Arthur and Merida is a delicate process, filled with tender moments and emotional challenges. From the moment Merida emerged from the waves, drawn by the enchanting melody of Arthur's violin, an inexplicable bond began to form between them. Every night, Arthur played on the beach, and gradually, Merida came closer and closer until she finally revealed herself to him. On that especially clear night, under the silver light of the moon, Merida emerged from the waters and shyly approached Arthur. The young musician, surprised and enchanted, could hardly believe the sight before his eyes. You're real?" he whispered, his eyes fixed on the ethereal figure of the mermaid. Merida smiled and gently replied, "Yes, I'm real. And your music called me." From that encounter, a series of magical nights followed, where the two sat on the sand, sharing stories and melodies. Arthur talked about his life in the city, his aspirations, and his fears. Merida, in turn, narrated ancient tales of the ocean, legends of mermaids and humans, and sang songs that seemed to carry the very essence of the sea. As time passed, the feeling between them grew in a way neither of them could have predicted. Arthur, who initially sought only inspiration for his music, found in Merida a muse and, more than that, a companion for his soul. With each night they spent together, the bond between them strengthened, and Merida's presence brought him a peace and joy he had never experienced before. However, both were aware of the barriers that stood between their realities. Arthur lived on solid ground, with a musical career that was beginning to show signs of decline, while Merida belonged to the vast and mysterious underwater world. One night, as they gazed at the horizon together, Arthur confided, "Merida, I feel my music is changing, that I'm finding a new voice through you, but at the same time, I feel the pressure of trying to save my career." Merida took his hand and replied firmly, "Arthur, true music comes from the heart. Don't let fear overshadow your passion. We'll find a way." Inspired by these words, Arthur began composing a new symphony, one that captured the magic of Merida's songs and the depth of the ocean. Every note seemed to contain the essence of the stories she shared, and he felt he was finally creating something truly unique. Meanwhile, Merida faced a profound dilemma. She knew that her nightly visits to the beach, though enchanting, could not last forever. The decision to leave her aquatic life behind to live with Arthur as a human was a real possibility, but also an immense sacrifice. On one of those nights, as they watched the stars reflected in the calm waters, Merida confided her fears to Arthur. "I love the sea, Arthur. It's part of who I am. But I also love you. The thought of leaving everything behind scares me." Arthur, with a heavy heart, gently caressed Merida's face and said, "I understand, Merida. And I would never ask you to make such a sacrifice. I just want you to know that, no matter what happens, my love for you will not change." These words brought temporary comfort, but the decision still loomed over them. The time they spent together was precious, but the uncertainty of the future cast a shadow over their happiness. Between melodies and confessions, they began to realize that true love often requires sacrifices, but it can also bring unexpected solutions. So, in the following nights, Arthur and Merida continued to explore their emotions and search for a way to harmonize their distinct lives, hoping that love could find a way. The tranquility of Lyme Regis was shaken when an industrial fishing company announced its plans to explore the waters of the region. The news spread quickly through the town, causing concern among the residents. Merida, who now shared a deep connection with Arthur and had revealed her identity as a mermaid, felt a chill as she realized the impact this would have on the marine ecosystem. She knew she had to act, and fast. One night, while Arthur played a soft melody on his violin, Merida emerged from the waters and approached him with a serious expression. "Arthur, we need to talk. Something terrible is about to happen," she said, her voice filled with urgency. Arthur stopped playing and looked at her, concerned. "What's wrong, Merida?" She explained the situation, detailing how industrial fishing could destroy her home and the creatures that lived there. "They will devastate everything, Arthur. Not just my world, but also the beauty and life you love so much here in Lyme Regis." Arthur was silent for a moment, absorbing the gravity of the situation. "So, what can we do?" he asked, determined to help. Merida suggested they join forces with the town's residents to fight against the threat. "We need everyone, Arthur. We need the strength and voice of every person in this town." In the following days, Arthur and Merida started organizing protests and awareness campaigns. Arthur used his music as a powerful tool, composing a song that became the anthem of the movement. At a meeting in the town square, he climbed onto the makeshift stage and spoke to the gathered crowd. "We're here to protect our home, our waters, and the life that depends on them. We cannot allow greed to destroy what we love." The residents of Lyme Regis responded enthusiastically. Posters were made, leaflets distributed, and a petition was started. Merida, though she had to remain hidden, also contributed. In secret meetings with community leaders, she shared her vast knowledge about the ocean and its creatures, providing valuable information for the cause. In one of these meetings, Arthur and Merida met with the town's mayor, Mr. Collins. "We need your support, sir," Arthur said. "You are the voice of our town. If you take a stand against this company, many will follow your lead." The mayor, a middle-aged man with a perpetually worried expression, looked at Merida with curiosity. "And who is this young lady?" he asked. Arthur hesitated for a moment, but Merida intervened. "I'm someone who loves this sea as much as you do, and I'm willing to fight for it." Mr. Collins seemed convinced by the passion in her words. "Very well, I'll do what I can," he promised. The battle was not easy. The industrial fishing company had resources and influence. In an attempt to intimidate the protesters, they sent representatives to confront Arthur and the other leaders of the movement. "You're wasting your time," said one of the representatives, a tall man in a pristine suit. "This operation is going to happen, whether you like it or not." Arthur was not intimidated. "We won't back down," he replied firmly. "This is our home, and we're going to defend it." The protests continued to grow. In one of the largest demonstrations, Arthur played his new symphony for the crowd, a piece inspired by Merida's songs. The music echoed through the square, filling the air with a sense of hope and determination. Merida, hidden among the spectators, felt her heart swell with pride and love for Arthur. As the struggle continued, Arthur and Merida realized they were not alone. The community of Lyme Regis was united like never before. And although they knew the road ahead would be difficult, they were determined to protect the sea and everything it represented. James, Arthur's best friend and an investigative journalist, arrived in Lyme Regis for a visit, unaware that his presence would become crucial in the fight against the industrial fishing company. He was curious to see how Arthur was adapting to the new town and, especially, about the fascinating stories his friend had mentioned in his letters about a mysterious mermaid named Merida. When he found Arthur at the small seaside house, James sensed the tension in the air. "Arthur, you seem worried. What's going on?" James asked, his voice filled with concern. Arthur sighed deeply before answering. "James, the situation here is more complicated than I could have imagined. There's an industrial fishing company that's about to destroy the marine ecosystem of Lyme Regis. And it's not just that. Merida, the mermaid I told you about, is directly threatened by this company." Intrigued and determined to help, James decided to get involved in the fight against the fishing company. As an investigative journalist, he knew he could use his skills to uncover more about the situation. "Let me help, Arthur. I'll investigate this company and see what I can find out." In the days that followed, James delved deep into his research. He interviewed local fishermen, environmentalists, and even some employees of the fishing company. During his inquiries, he heard old local legends about mermaids and their interactions with humans, which only piqued his curiosity further. One evening, while reviewing notes in the town's small pub, he was approached by an old fisherman who seemed to know more than he let on. "You're looking for stories about mermaids, aren't you?" the old man said with a piercing gaze. "I've heard rumors about them since I was a child. They say there's an ancient connection between humans and mermaids, something that goes far beyond the legends." James was about to ask more when the old fisherman abruptly stood up and left the pub, leaving James with more questions than answers. Determined to follow this new lead, James continued his investigations and eventually found ancient documents buried in the local library's archives. These documents revealed a historical conspiracy involving mermaids and humans, suggesting that much more was at stake than just the immediate environmental threat. He rushed to share his findings with Arthur and Merida. "Arthur, Merida, you won't believe what I found," James exclaimed as he spread the documents across the table. "There are records of an ancient pact between humans and mermaids. This pact was broken, and it seems the fishing company is somehow involved in this. They know about the mermaids and are trying to exploit this for their own purposes." Merida looked at the documents with a mixture of shock and recognition. That makes sense. There have always been stories among the mermaids about a deal with humans, but we never knew exactly what happened. Arthur, with a serious expression, said, "We need to expose this to the public. If we can prove there's a bigger conspiracy, we might gain more support and possibly stop the destruction of the sea." James agreed and began planning how he could use his journalistic connections to bring the truth to light. "I'll write a detailed article about this and send it to all my media contacts. We need the world to know what's happening here." With James' help, Arthur and Merida began to see a light at the end of the tunnel. They knew the battle was far from over, but now they had a powerful weapon, the truth. And with that, the hope that they could protect the sea and its magical creatures, ensuring a future where humans and mermaids could coexist in harmony. Merida was in deep reflection. With each meeting with Arthur, the mermaid found herself more torn between her growing love for him and her identity as a dweller of the ocean depths. Seeking answers, she swam to a reef where her mermaid sisters often gathered. There, she found Nerida, an old and wise mermaid known for her thoughtful advice. "Merida, dear, what brings you here on such a starry night?" asked Nerida, noticing the restlessness on the young mermaid's face. "I'm in a dilemma, Nerida. I've met a human, Arthur, and I feel that I love him. But I don't know if I can or should leave my world for him," Merida confessed, her voice filled with uncertainty. Nerida gazed at the sea for a moment before responding. "Love between beings from different worlds has always been complicated. You must weigh your heart carefully. What are you willing to sacrifice? And what is he willing to sacrifice for you?" Merida returned to the sea with more questions than answers. Meanwhile, Arthur, in his small seaside house, was equally tormented. His agent was pressuring him to finish the symphony he had been composing, but his thoughts were consumed by Merida and the environmental situation threatening the ocean. One night, while playing his violin on the beach, Arthur felt Merida's presence before he even saw her. She emerged from the waters, her expression serious. "Arthur, we need to talk," Merida began, her voice slightly trembling. "I know, Merida. I'm confused too. I love you, but I can't ask you to leave your life for me," Arthur replied, putting the violin aside and approaching her. Merida sighed, looking out at the horizon. "And I can't ask you to leave your world for me. But what do we do then? How can we go on like this?" Arthur took her hand, feeling the smooth, aquatic texture of her skin. "The truth is, I don't know, Merida. But I know that I don't want to lose you. Maybe there's a path we haven't seen yet." Their subsequent meetings were filled with deep discussions about identity and belonging. Arthur shared his doubts about his career, confessing that the music he now created was inspired by Merida and her stories, but that the pressure to finish the symphony was becoming unbearable. "Arthur, your music is beautiful because it comes from the heart. Don't let external pressures destroy that," Merida advised one night, her eyes shining with determination. "But Merida, what if I can't finish it? What if, in the end, I disappoint everyone, including you?" Arthur questioned, his voice heavy with anguish. "You would never disappoint me, Arthur. True love is about support and acceptance, even in failures. And about sacrifices, sometimes we have to make difficult choices to move forward," Merida said, squeezing his hand firmly. Meanwhile, the mermaids continued to debate Merida's fate, unable to reach a consensus. Some advised her to follow her heart, while others warned her about the dangers of abandoning her essence. Merida found herself at a crossroads, torn between two worlds. Arthur, in turn, felt the reality of his dilemma intensifying. Each night without Merida by his side felt like an eternity. He began to wonder if he could live without her, if the symphony would have any meaning without the muse who inspired every note. On a clear night, Arthur made one last attempt to find answers. "Merida, have you ever thought about living between the two worlds? Is there any way you could be part of both the sea and the land?" Merida shook her head sadly. "I don't know, Arthur. Our magic is complex and often unpredictable. But if there is a way, I'm willing to look for it. I just need to know that you'll be with me, no matter what happens." Arthur smiled, holding her tenderly. "Always, Merida. I'll always be by your side." And so, they decided to face the challenges ahead together, knowing that true love requires sacrifices but also offers the strength needed to overcome them. James, with his sharp investigative skills, had spent the last few days immersed in documents and ancient legends, trying to unravel the mysteries surrounding the industrial fishing company. One night, he found something that left him perplexed, a series of ancient manuscripts suggesting the existence of an ancestral pact between humans and sea beings, a pact that had been broken. Eager to share his findings, he rushed to Arthur's small house, where Merida was also present. "Arthur, Merida, you need to see this," James said, entering the house with an urgent look. "I found something that could change everything." Arthur and Merida exchanged curious and worried glances. "What is it, James?" Arthur asked as Merida moved closer to hear better. James opened his laptop, showing photos of the ancient manuscripts. These documents talk about a pact made centuries ago between humans and sea beings. According to the legends, humans promised to protect the ocean and its creatures in exchange for the wisdom and blessings of the mermaids. But it seems that this pact was broken when the fishing company started exploiting these waters. Merida frowned, recalling the stories her mermaid grandmother had told. "My grandmother mentioned something about an ancient pact, but I never knew the details." "This makes sense. The fishing company is violating a sacred agreement." Arthur felt a chill run down his spine as he realized the gravity of the situation. So, the fishing company isn't just destroying the environment, they're disrespecting a pact that maintains the balance between our worlds. James nodded. "Exactly. And if we don't do something, the consequences could be disastrous for both sides." Determined to act, Arthur suggested, "We need to confront the people responsible for the company. If we can prove that they're violating an ancestral pact, maybe we can stop them." Merida agreed, though she knew that facing the company wouldn't be an easy task. "We have to try. We can't let them keep destroying our home." The next day, armed with the evidence James had uncovered, Arthur and Merida went to the fishing company's headquarters. James accompanied them, ready to use his journalistic skills to expose the truth. In the lobby, they were met by the operations manager, a stern man named Mr. Collins. "What do you want?" Mr. Collins asked, looking suspiciously at the group. Arthur took a deep breath and said firmly, "We're here to discuss your company's activities and how they are violating an ancient pact between humans and sea beings." Mr. Collins let out a sarcastic laugh. "An ancient pact? Are you serious? That's just a legend." James stepped in, showing photos of the manuscripts. "These documents prove that the pact is real. If you continue with your operations, you will be disrespecting a sacred agreement and putting the harmony between our worlds at risk." Mr. Collins hesitated, clearly surprised by the seriousness of the evidence presented. This is ridiculous. I'll need to speak with my superiors." Merida, with a serious and determined expression, added, "You have no idea what forces you're dealing with. The ocean will not forgive this violation." The tension in the air was palpable. Realizing that the situation was more complex than he had imagined, Mr. Collins decided to take the group to the company president. As they entered the luxurious meeting room, they found Mr. Whitaker, a man with a stern and calculating appearance. "I hear you have some interesting accusations to make," said Mr. Whitaker, looking at the group with disdain. Arthur, staying calm, explained once more about the pact and the consequences of violating it. James presented the evidence, while Merida, with an almost magical aura of authority, emphasized the gravity of the situation. Mr. Whitaker listened to everything in silence, his face expressionless. After a long moment, he finally said, "These are serious claims. I'll need to verify the authenticity of these documents. In the meantime, we'll temporarily suspend our operations." Although it was only a temporary victory, Arthur, Merida, and James knew they had taken a crucial step in their fight against the fishing company. They left the office with a renewed sense of hope and determination. "This is just the beginning," said Merida as they walked back to town. "We still have a lot to do to protect our home." Arthur held her hand, feeling the deep connection they shared. "And we'll do it together, no matter what happens." James, walking beside them, smiled. "We'll expose this conspiracy and make sure the pact is respected. We're in this together, until the end." With this resolve, the trio prepared to face the next challenges, determined to protect the sea and restore harmony between their worlds. Arthur, Merida, James, and the residents of Lyme Regis were about to face the most important battle of their lives. The small coastal town, known for its tranquility and natural beauty, had turned into a stronghold of resistance against the industrial fishing company threatening the marine ecosystem. The preparations for a large demonstration were intense, involving all the local residents, united by the same cause, to protect the sea and its magical creatures. On the eve of the demonstration, Arthur and Merida met on the beach. The full moon illuminated the sand and waves, creating an almost magical scene. "Do you think we're ready?" Arthur asked, holding Merida's hand. She looked out to the horizon, where the sea seemed to merge with the night sky, and replied firmly, "We don't have a choice. We need to be. The sea depends on us." James, always restless and investigative, was busy organizing the logistics of the demonstration. He had managed to attract the attention of several journalists and environmental activists to the event, ensuring that their struggle would gain national visibility. "Everything has to go perfectly tomorrow. The media will be here, the authorities will be watching us. We can't fail," he said, while checking the final details with a group of volunteers. On the day of the demonstration, the beach in Lyme Regis was filled with people carrying signs and banners. The atmosphere was tense yet hopeful. Arthur, with his violin in hand, began playing a melody that combined the strength of the waves with the gentleness of the wind. His music resonated as a call for unity, a reminder of all that was at stake. In a brave act, Merida used her magical abilities to draw even more attention from the media and authorities present. With a graceful movement, she summoned a series of sea creatures that emerged from the waters, creating an impressive spectacle. Dolphins leaped, shimmering fish danced, and even a majestic whale appeared, all in perfect harmony with Arthur's music. Look! Look at what we're about to destroy!" Merida exclaimed, her voice echoing across the beach. "These creatures, this sea, all of this is part of us. We cannot let greed and destruction prevail." Her passion and determination were palpable, and the crowd responded with applause and cheers of support. The pressure on the fishing company was immense. The executives, who had initially ignored the protests, now found themselves forced to temporarily retreat. The demonstration had been a success, but Arthur and Merida knew it was only a partial victory. "They'll be back," Arthur said as he watched the company's boats pull away. "We need to find a permanent solution." James, who had meticulously documented everything, approached with a determined expression. "We have to keep fighting. We need more evidence, more support. We can't stop now." Merida agreed, but there was something else on her mind. "Arthur, we need to go beyond the demonstrations. There's an ancient legend that speaks of a pact between humans and sea beings. Maybe there's a way to restore that balance." Arthur looked at Merida, recognizing the depth of her concern. "Do you think we can find this solution together?" he asked, with a touch of hope in his voice. "Yes," Merida replied, with a gentle smile. "But we'll need all the help we can get." The battle for the sea was far from over, but Arthur, Merida, James, and the residents of Lyme Regis were more united and determined than ever. They knew that the real fight was just beginning and that every step taken toward preserving the ocean was a step toward a better future for all. Merida knew her decision wouldn't be easy. Deep down, she understood that the only way to save the sea and stay by Arthur's side was to leave her aquatic life behind and become human permanently. Each night, As she watched Arthur play his violin under the moonlight, the conviction in her heart grew stronger. The love she felt for him was deep as the waters she had always called home. One night, as the waves gently broke on the shore, Merida turned to Arthur, her eyes reflecting both anguish and determination. "Arthur, I've decided. I'm going to become human. Forever." Arthur, surprised and concerned, put down his violin and held Merida's hands. "But Merida, what if something goes wrong? What if you can never return to the sea again?" Merida smiled sadly, gently caressing Arthur's face. "I know the risks, but the sea needs to be saved. And I need you." With the decision made, Merida knew she needed to seek the help of an ancient sea witch, known for her ability to manipulate the deep ocean's magic. It was a dangerous journey, but Merida was determined. Arthur, in turn, promised to support her every step of the way. The next morning, Arthur and Merida set out to find the witch. The waters were restless, as if sensing the importance of the moment. When they finally reached the witch's lair, an underwater cave illuminated by bioluminescent corals, they were greeted by an imposing figure. The witch had eyes that seemed to see through one's soul and a presence that inspired both respect and fear. "Merida, daughter of the ocean, are you certain of your decision?" the witch asked, her voice echoing through the cave walls. "Yes, I am," Merida replied firmly. "I'm willing to sacrifice everything to save the sea and be with the one I love." The witch nodded slowly. "The process is risky and may not be reversible. Once you become human, there is no guarantee you will ever be able to return to the sea." Arthur squeezed Merida's hand, his gaze full of concern and love. "I'll be with you, no matter what happens." The witch began to chant an ancient spell, and the cave filled with a magical light. Merida felt a wave of energy envelop her, as if the ocean itself was bidding her farewell. The transformation was painful, every fiber of her being seemed to be rearranging. Arthur watched, his heart heavy with fear, but also filled with hope. As the transformation took place, Merida felt a deep connection with the sea, as if they were saying goodbye in one final embrace. When the light finally faded, Merida lay on the sand, now with human legs. Arthur ran to her, holding her in his arms, tears of relief and happiness streaming down his face. "You did it, Merida. You did it," he said, his voice choked with emotion. Merida looked at him, her eyes shining with a mix of happiness and sadness. "Yes, but this is just the beginning. We have to save the sea." Together, Arthur and Merida returned to the beach at Lyme Regis, where the townspeople were gathered, anxiously awaiting news. Merida's presence as a human caused awe and admiration. They knew they had witnessed something extraordinary. With renewed determination, Arthur and Merida led the fight against the fishing company, using their new abilities and Merida's magical connection with the ocean to draw attention and support. The battle was far from over, but now, with Merida by Arthur's side as a human, they were stronger and more united than ever. Together, they would face any challenge that came their way, knowing that love and courage could overcome any obstacle. During Merida's delicate transformation process, something surprising and unexpected occurred. The sea witch's magic began to glow intensely, revealing secrets long buried in the ocean's depths. Merida, encased in a shimmering cocoon of light, felt a surge of energy course through her body, bringing to the surface forgotten memories of her ancestry. The sea witch, her voice deep and full of wisdom, looked deeply into Merida's eyes and said, "You are more than just a simple mermaid, Merida. You are a princess of an underwater kingdom, destined to unite humans and sea beings. Your true nature is a link between two worlds, a symbol of peace and hope." Arthur, who had been watching intently, felt a mix of surprise and relief. He ran to Merida, holding her hands as the lights around her began to fade. "Merida, this means you don't have to choose between being human or a mermaid. You can be both. You can exist in both worlds." Merida, still processing the revelations, smiled with tears in her eyes. "Finally, Arthur, I can be who I truly am. I can love you without giving up my identity, without abandoning my home. We can build a bridge between our worlds. With this new understanding of her mission, Merida and Arthur joined forces to confront the industrial fishing company. The revelation about Merida not only strengthened their resolve but also awakened a new sense of purpose in the people of Lyme Regis. They organized a massive demonstration, and this time, the story of Merida, the Sea Princess, captivated the international media. The fishing company, pressured by public opinion and Merida's undeniable magic, finally retreated. Their exploitation plans were dismantled, and the waters of Lyme Regis began to recover. The marine ecosystem, once threatened, flourished again under the protection of Merida and the town's residents. Meanwhile, Arthur felt a wave of inspiration flood his soul. With the melodies of the sea and Merida's stories echoing in his mind, he finally completed his symphony. The piece was an ode to the ocean, a celebration of the union between humans and sea beings. His violin, now infused with Merida's magical songs, resonated with a depth and beauty never heard before. On a gala night, Arthur debuted his symphony in a grand theater by the sea. The audience, made up of both humans and sea beings, watched in total enchantment. Merida, now recognized as a princess, stood beside Arthur, the two holding hands, symbolizing the new era of harmony between their worlds. After the performance, Merida and Arthur walked along the beach where it all began. "I never imagined I would find so much love and purpose by following the sound of your violin on that full moon night," Merida said, looking out at the horizon where the sea met the sky. Arthur smiled and pulled her closer. "And I never imagined that my search for inspiration would lead me to something so magical and transformative. Together, we can protect and honor both our worlds." With the sea whispering its ancient songs and the full moon lighting their path, Arthur and Merida promised to continue fighting for peace and the protection of the oceans, knowing that their love and unity were the key to a harmonious future. And so, the melody of the sea, now complete and eternal, echoed throughout Lyme Regis, a testament to the power of love and the magic that unites hearts and worlds. Good night and enchanted dreams.